Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast. This is a very unique and unprecedented situation, which is why we're having these podcasts right before our flagship event, FILUMS. On these podcasts, we talk all things visual arts and movies and films and TV shows and all the things that go into making these things. And of course, because it's the road to our flagship event, Films, we are very excited today to have someone lovely in conversation with us. I'm your co host, Manur, and this is the host, Tanya, and she's going to go on to now introducing our very talented and special guest.
Okay, so guys, I hope you're very excited for today's guest. We have Mr. Arafat Mazhar today with us. He's the director of Puffball Studios. He has launched Shehri Tabassum, and now he's launching Swipe. But before that, let's sort of, rewind a little back. So back when you started, you
Mm.
started off with, you were born in a family, in a religious family, and then you moved towards music, and then you sort of have always been a rebellious spirit, I believe so. You've been
Mm.
working in Engage Pakistan, and then we saw all of your work there, reforming blasphemy laws in Pakistan, and how all of that played out. So, could we know how sort of in the whole big picture, how did starting a 2D animation studio come into the picture? Like from a software
Mm.
consultancy to a 2D
Mm.
animation, how I want to know it
Mm.
from your perspective. What is your story? Need to hear it from your own mouth.
I mean, I think partly the first need was very functional.
Hmm.
That being in the development sector or a research organization, we're used to, or even academia, writing papers, big reports, 400-page reports, and no matter how a lot of them aren't that well done in the development sector. In the academia, yes, but in the development sector, they're not. But even when they're well done, they're not accessible. And it's not just a language issue. It's simple as who's going to read a 400-page report that requires a prerequisite knowledge on certain areas. And the landscape of the way you acquire knowledge is changing. And also books and especially reports are a very also make that knowledge very elite and very exclusive. You can make it very accessible. So the first reason was to make 2D animations that we can enact and we can translate a lot of our research into small 5-minute animated bits. And they were more like explainers. So explainers and animated sequences like TED animations. So 3-4 years ago, that was the model that I figured, okay, uh, we're doing a report, we should do other forms of that same thing. So summaries of that in a video form. So that was the functional reason. But somewhere down the line, we had experimented with a lot of things with civic education animations, with different design ideas of how to tell that maybe sometimes in a fictional setting, slightly fictional settings, character driven, very explainer like. But I think somewhere in the middle, it was clear to me that everything was very cognitive. Everything was very up here. Know your rights and all, and that's all well and good. That's important. But I think personally speaking, I needed to. I could see that there's a lot of love that I was starting to feel for the visual arts, and I felt there were stories I wanted to tell, very specifically at the intersection of technology, radical Islam, and fascist states. And that came first before the form or anything. And then what could it, what form could it take? Could it be a graphic novel? Could it be 2D animation? And that's when a few films came into my mind, and I was committed to making a 2D animated film. That I'm going to at least make one 2D animated film that explores the local anxieties and why don't we have one in Urdu. And of course, I love the craft itself, and the team that I was surrounded by was way too talented to only do explanation videos. So that's how I think it was a very organic result of say the same thing first in a different form. Once you reach the form, then wanting to the same say the same thing but not in the exact same words, to explore the emotional intuitive side of it. So Shehr Tabassum may be saying the same thing as a very analytical report, but in its own language, and we wanted to express ourselves collectively and with confidence, project our voices and our emotions that are aligned with what we're saying intellectually. So, in other words, I would say we were integrating our head and our hearts kind of thing in a very Buddhist philosophy sort of way. We were integrating our cognitive and our intuitive selves. And I think these fictional films and these 2D animated films allow us to do that. So apart from the love for the craft, apart from the fact that there were some original story ideas that were coming to us, and there were some very real, authentic anxieties that we were exploring, and that we are very grounded in the research that was required for those kind of films, and a general love for film, and surrounded by excellent animators, and wanting to learn animation myself as well. Everything combined, you have a 2D animation studio. Was very good. I thought it was a very good film. I thought it was. I thought most people would be interested in the gimmick of it and not look beyond it. That they would think, oh, Pakistani animated film or Pakistani cyberpunk looking film. But what exceeded my expectation was the engagement with the substance of the film, with the technicalities of the film, with the cinema part of the film. That completely exceeded all of our expectations. I can say that for everyone, and we saw that on the tour that we did with your universities in Lahore, Karachi, and Islamabad. The kind of engagement that we got from students. Sometimes you'd get engagements from, okay, how exactly was this shot composited, or how was this animated? And Hasib would come in, our lead animator and our creative director on Swipe, and explain that, or what was the creative decision behind this, or how does this arc resolve itself. But then to substantive issues like, how does this relate to issues in Pakistan? And people would interpret these films in such personal and political ways that for me was beyond expectations. I somewhat expected the first one to be there, but the second one, and to even on YouTube, the kind of like dislike ratio and the kind of comments we receive, and the kind of reviews we receive, but most importantly, the student engagement was incredible. Karachi University, I heard students ask questions that I've never been asked. When I've talked about the particular issue explicitly, I've not been asked questions in such an insightful way, which for me was a demonstration of how powerful cinema can be, of how powerful image can be, audio, sound, music can be. So it did exceed, and I think for me and for everyone else, it was for us it was a success.
So let's talk about Swipe. Now, it's
Hmm.
aesthetically a bit different from Share Tabassum, but at the same time, it's got those important themes that are sort of you have that in common with Share Tabassum. Now, tell us about the idea generation process of Swipe. How did this come about? Was it like one person who thought of it? Did you guys work together? Walk us through
Hmm.
the process.
So aesthetically, it's radically different from Shehri Tabassum. So Isma Gul Hassan was the art creative director for Shehri Tabassum. So the brief obviously was very different. Set in the future, it's supposed to look a little unfamiliar yet local. And the art director and creative director in this is Hasib Rahman, who comes from Multan. And I told him it's set in Multan. Refuses to believe that it's set in Multan. Still fights me on it, but it is set in Multan. And he brings his aesthetic to the table, and these are two very different aesthetics. But as you said, there is something that binds both of them together, and that is the exploration and the anxieties of what we call the cyber khilafat, the genre, the idea of how speech can be stifled, expression can be stifled using technology, surveillance, and radical Islam, and what can a modern technology, what can it do to an already weaponized, instrumentalized religion? Now, the process of conceptually, it was very much like things sometimes work here. I came in one day and uh, I said that I have a story in mind. There's a kid who's gonna do this, and this, and then this is gonna happen. And so it was like a 30-second, 35-second A to B to C to D story. And the first thought was that's a very dark story, Arafat. And I was like, no, it's a black comedy. And that was the original. Fine. And that was the one of the original ideas, that it was going to be an absurdist film, a black comedy, and it still retains some of those elements. But the original concept was from me, came from looking at some of the. So I was doing some research for a documentary and went to some of the jalsas, and I saw a lot of. So I went to a few Khadim Rizvi jalsas, and there were children there, a lot of kids there, and I was just very disturbed and moved by that. How are we failing our children, and how we are robbing them of innocence, and what is my role, and how am I complicit in failing them? So that's what inspired the concept, that in spirit. Then conceptually, it was just, there was, I remember, like, there was a scene in a film and people were saying you're a match or not a match. They were talking about Tinder, and there was something seemed very disconnected and lacking humanity about all of this. And these two things happened very close to each other, and I figured, oh, here's an idea. How about there's an app? It's like Tinder for muftis, but before you know it, muftis aren't using it. Children are obsessed with it because it's now become like a game, and it's an exploration of a city that is disintegrating, spiritually dying, because all the children are obsessed with this app, swiping right to Wajib al so that they can go up the Ajr board, quote unquote, and it's turned into a game. So that was the concept. And then as all of our projects, everybody comes together, and then they flesh it out, flesh the world out beyond what the film is. What would the world look like there? How would people use it? How would political parties use it? So even if something's not necessarily part of the film, we really talked it through. And this was somewhere in the middle of Shehri Tabassum. We have done 70% in. We were 70% into Shehri Tabassum, and the production somewhat started. So and Salman, Hasib Rahman, who's our lead animator and a creative director, and is the assistant director at this time as well, and Salman, who was one of our animators, they started on one of the sequences way back. But then we paused it for a bit. I don't think we were doing it justice by doing it parallel to Tabassum. So when Tabassum ended, is when we really started it, and then COVID happened. But the process of writing it was very collaborative, as it always is. I don't get very attached to my own ideas. I think I'm just attached to a shared vision. And as soon as that shared vision is there, I think there are people much more competent than me to do the executions of, okay, what exactly is the dialogue here? I would say, this is what I want to say, this is what's going to happen, but what should it be there? So even if I write something, someone else will make it better. And then, when the execution stage comes in, and if you guys ask me, then I'll tell you how Hasib came in and just completely blew my mind over there. But at least the idea-wise, that was just a very super collaborative, just like it was some. Our screenplay credit sequences are really long, because even if you come up with the name of an app, you're gonna be named in the screenplay section. So it's very collaborative like that.
Arfat, do you think that the Awam is ready for a dialogue like this? The way that you've sort of, conveyed the message through Swipe and sort of explained the current state of Pakistan in a way, and sort of the way you've sort of, hinted at a lot of things, a lot of political sort of things you're trying to hint at. Do you think it's a
Mm.
conversation people are ready for? Do you think they're accepting, they are ready to listen to this? I mean, I do think that the minute there is something like iFatwa app, people start calling it a religious Tinder. I mean, people are going to perhaps sort of, go up on Twitter, a lot of angry messages here and there. Do you think people are ready for a dialogue like the one you're trying to initiate?
I hope people don't start calling it that. Um, just, um, Well, I mean, because calling it that takes away from what the film is about. But obviously,
Yes.
in jest, people will call it that, and then people will have, and those are things beyond my control. And what's beyond my control, there's no point in trying to grapple with that. But the question that you asked, do I think people are ready to engage or to have a dialogue? Um, the truth of the matter is we are at a point as a community, as a society, like many societies have been in the past, are in the present, will be in the future, at a point where we cannot even afford to ask that question anymore. It's I don't have the luxury to ask that question. The question isn't whether the society is ready to have that conversation. The question is whether we are ready to project what we have to say fully and confidently to people, and in a way that is genuine and authentic and emotional enough that it breaks through their defenses. That's the only
Mhm.
thing I can hope for. It's the only thing in my control. Their reaction, their response is not my control. But being authentic, not trying to make fun of people for the sake of it, not
Mhm.
trying to belittle anyone, not try
Mhm.
be make a cash grab out of someone's sentiment. That is something in my control. And so, what the question for me is not whether people are willing to, because I don't think we can afford to have that ask that question even. I mean, if not
Mhm.
now, then never. So it
Then
is
never,
a
yeah.
yeah. So the question for me is this: are we are we willing to be authentic? I would use the word courageous as well as a team, because a lot of people are into this, and
Mm.
committed enough to an honest storytelling, and in which their biggest intent isn't we want to make a pretty film, we want to make a technically accurate film, we want to make an art film, where the biggest intent isn't that, where the deepest intent is we want to we want to reflect something about our anxieties, about how we feel, and project it honestly to our people, to our brothers and sisters, to our community. The deepest intent is that.
We saw with Zindagi Tamasha also that filmmakers took a step forward, sort of tried telling a story that people were not ready to hear. And then we saw
Mm.
censorship. Do you think that could happen to Swipe? And if it does, what
Mm.
would you do?
I mean, so hopefully the thing is that film's gonna go on YouTube. Uh, filmmakers usually, it's not the place where you usually put, so it goes under the radar of a lot of, you know, people who would bilawaj make something out of a film that it's not even is. As was with Zindagi Tamasha, people lied about the film, tried to make it more controversial than it was. In our case, I think we're just not as big as Salmat who said. So when by the time the film is released, no one's gonna be, I think, going like, "What is this film?" And once the film is released, they have already seen it. The thing with Zindagi Tamasha was that people believe propaganda. They hadn't seen the film. This film is, inshallah, going online on YouTube. People will see the film. So the decision will be made not by some elite bureaucracy or people who claim to be the custodians of religion. It will be made by the people who see the film in its entirety, which we didn't get to do with Zindagi Tamasha. So ideally and hopefully, because that's one of the benefits of releasing something like this just on YouTube for everyone. And so far, even with the premise sounding pretty controversial on the surface, the response has been pretty exceptional for us, even if it's a very small community to start with. Hopefully, that community, when it takes on ownership of the risk on social media by sharing the film, they become part of that story that we endorse this film. The risk then distributes a little. And I think then the louder voices become, oh, who are the people who are on the top comments? What is the hashtag? What are the reviews? And before anyone can have a malicious intent of trying to come in the way of this film without seeing the film, hopefully the conversation would have already been settled. This is an honest, authentic, one of its kind film made in Urdu that is made for the people, by the people of Pakistan. And it is one of the most unprecedented things that have happened in Pakistani cinema. And hopefully that's the conversation, the more important conversation, before it becomes unnecessarily controversial. And in case they tried something like this happens, it happens. I'm going to make my peace with it. As I said, the first more important goal is for it to go up, for us to project our voice with as much confidence and strength as we can. If shit ton of hands come in and they start choking us and not let us speak, there's only so much we can do.
So, apart, when you sort of decide that you're making a film, you have an idea, but
Hmm.
the element of in entertainment needs to be incorporated. And
Hmm.
how much does that weigh in when you're actually sort of producing something? How much does the factor of entertainment sort of go with what the intent, the vision, or the main message of your production is?
So I think I would use the word that just a good story, right? So whether the story is um, so a good story before anything else. So have a good story before you start. I don't want the film to preach anything. Shehri Tabassum wasn't meant to be preachy either. So just something gripping. So I would consider a thriller to be entertainment as well. So Shehri Tabassum for me was entertaining in that it was gripping. Now it wasn't obviously entertaining in a popcorn sort of sense of the way, which I do wanna do. Like the feature length version of Sheher Tabassum, I want it to be like a blockbuster. I want it to be big and I want it to be accessible. I want it to be commercial in the sense of how it looks. But it is important. It's like, when you see a Christopher Nolan film and you compare it to his original films, and the scales are so much bigger, but there's also something about it's much more entertaining now. Maybe there's something that's lost along the way, yes, but it's just such pure cinema. It's so much fun to watch, just the spectacle of it. Now in a short film, uh the part that I would say that were important beyond messaging was that for it to look visually beautiful, for the story to be compelling is the word, for there to be humor in it, for it to not take itself too seriously throughout the course of the film. So those are all partly what makes a film entertaining to watch. So in that sense, it is very crucial. In fact, in some ways, it is more crucial that first you do that before you
Mhm.
try to check boxes of. In fact, you shouldn't even be trying to say that. Once you
Mhm.
know what the shared vision is, the quote unquote message will automatically reflect in your images, and it will be abstract enough for hopefully for people to interpret it differently. When you focus too much on this is the message I want to convey, then A, it becomes preachy and boring. B, there's just not enough room for people to make it their own as well. So yeah, I don't think we focused at all too much on this is the message that we want to. The
Okay.
spirit, yes, yeah, but not the exact. Okay, this is the message we want to send.
Okay. All I heard in that entire answer was, should I assume that there's a Sheher Tabassum long feature coming up? Uh,
Rasti, should they assume there's a
You
shared
said it.
some long feature there? Yeah,
You
of
said
course.
it.
Yeah, of
Can
course you should
we
assume
can
it.
we consider this an official announcement, guys? This
You
is an
can consider
official announcement.
you can consider it an unofficial. You can consider it an unofficial announcement. I mean, I'm saying it, so I cannot make it. Yes,
You got this first on our podcast. This happened here live.
yeah, it did. It did happen here. Yeah. We have a treatment with us. We're just looking into options of how we want to finance it.
mhm.
But the intent is there very much. Um, I think we have a story we can that does justice to the world that was created with so much heart, and there's so many stories to tell in that world. I think there's a wonderful story to tell there. Um, but there is we want to sort of like announce later how we're doing it, but we're definitely inshallah, um, the intent is very much we're committed to doing a feature length. Yeah, share it with us
Okay.
soon.
Lastly, we have seen with Shehri Tabassum, with Swipe, there's a theme that Puffball Studio is working around, a sort of about censorship, subversion, talking about technology, religion, these conversations. Is there something else? Is there a different project that we should expect Puffball Studios, engaging with some a different genre, let's say? So,
Yeah, yeah. So the first film that I wanted to make, when I said that I wanted to make a 2D film, that I decided that I want to make a fictional 2D film, that was the first film that it's been there in my head for years now. Is still a very like it has themes. It's I guess the serious film, but it's a feature length project. It's a big undertaking. Um, but that one's not about technology. It's not about, but it's definitely still very much very much grounded. There's nothing fantastical about it. It's still very much a grounded idea, but it is not even in pre-production. So because I'm um, very particular that idea goes to production when we're really ready for it, and when someone's ready to finance it without compensating or compromising the vision of the film. So yes, you should be expecting thrillers, you should be expecting entertainment films, you should be expecting mystery films, you should be expecting all kinds of films. Hopefully, this one has adventure, it has humor. The one that I'm talking about, that's not even in pre-production yet. I'm talking about what it has. But I think it's a bit of a thriller of a film as well. Yeah, and even with Swipe, I was thinking today, wait, is it a thriller? It sort of is in some ways a thriller. Yeah. So in some ways, yeah, some themes of power and violence, I think, are just going to be there, but it doesn't all have to do with religion or with technology or with the state. But we do tend to, in all of our work, Hashia or Shehri Pakistan, our research work, we do deal with power and violence so intimately and so closely. I would like one day to wake up and decide that I want to make a story of a love story. It's my aspiration to wake up one day and have a story in my mind which is very intimate, very small scale, and it's a love story. And the day that happens, I'd be very happy. And it's almost like an aspiration of mine that, guys, I have an idea. And I'm not, I mean it very earnestly. I think you guys think I'm joking. I'm not. It's a serious thing because love has played such a huge part in my life that I want to make one, but somehow I can't seem to come up with anything.
We
So
want a rom-com from Puffball Animation. That'll be the
who
best
knows?
thing.
Who
We
knows? We might come up with a
eagerly
rom-com.
thank you for that, and thank you for being here, taking out the time. This was
No problem.
actually an amazing, like a lovely discussion. And we wish you,
Thank you.
your team, and Puffball all the best for your future projects. And
Thank you
for
so
our
much.
viewers who are watching, please, please, please check out Puffball Animations. Please see Swipe. And I mean, if you haven't seen Share the Bus, I mean, what are you doing? Seriously, you have to check it out. Follow their work. They're doing a brilliant, brilliant job.
Mm.
And I guess once again, from all of us, thank you so much for coming.
Yes,
Thank you
and
so much for having us.
let's hear it for the last time. Arfat, could you tell us the release date, the final release date for Swipe?
So the final release date of Swipe is this is Saturday, which is a 7th of November. I was
Yes.
having trouble calendar wise. So I know it's Saturday. So I was like, is it 8th? Is it 7th? The 7th November Saturday. That's the release date. That's how well informed I am as a director. I know these answers on the back of my hand. I don't ever look left or right. I know the answer. It's 7th November. It's Saturday. I haven't gone crazy. This is not the last time you'll see me.
Okay, guys, so do check out the movie on their official page, on the FILUMS page as well. It'll be available, and make sure you watch the podcast to sort of get more insights into what really happened, what was happening at the back end, what was the entire thought process, and yay!
Yeah, thank you for
Thank
having me.
you. Thank you. Thank you so much.